Good. What you doing tonight?
What am I doing tonight? I think I have a show tonight.
Oh, the burrito. That's a great. You
Yeah,
can. Yeah, nice.
yeah,
That
that'll
sounds
be pretty
great.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
good
What
guys,
time
real
today?
good guys. Well,
I was gonna
I,
see if you wanted to hang out with my friend. I have a friend in comics. It's my only working Marvel pro, and I'd like to introduce you to him.
well, that's
I know
cool. I am very interested in leveling up tonight too.
you
Before
want to level up.
doing that, yeah, I think we should level up. You want to level up?
Let's level up.
All right, let's level up. All right, so this friend you speak of,
Yeah. What about him?
I don't know. I don't trust your friends.
It's true. You've met a few of them. Not been great results. I'm going to be honest. Not been great.
It's a real mixed bag you got there, Travis.
Mixed bag. I have a lot of mixed company. Mixed company.
Yeah,
Mixed company. How's
mixed
that?
company.
Mixed.
Yeah.
Mixed company too.
Yeah, that's your sitcom. I'm into it. But I mean, we can give this. Who's this friend that you talked about?
His name is David Pepose. Have you heard of him?
Oh, yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I've interviewed him. He's one of the good ones.
Yeah.
So
But
cool.
if you've interviewed him or you've done anything with him, you'd have like a cool intro or something that like shows how cool he is, wouldn't you?
Yeah, let me see if I got anything.
All right, see if pull something up. Like hack the world, Todd. Hack the world.
Hey.
Hey,
Hey,
Thanks, guys.
what do you think of your cool intro?
I thought it was really cool. That was lovely. Thank you so much. I like the kind of synth bass line that was going. Those are some nice covers you picked. I really appreciate it. Thanks for rolling out the red carpet for me.
oh yeah, of course. I do like picking out the covers. I always try to grab a one, and then I'm like, okay, now a cool one to go with it.
I did have to send him back. You know, this is the first time I've ever given him feedback.
Yeah, it is.
It is. He put a cover in there that we'll talk about during your thing, but it's not one that I felt was appropriate.
It's
And
on
not
his site. It's on his site. I got it from his site.
it's not what you think.
Okay.
It's
So it's not what you think, right? Because
Yeah,
the
it's
other
not.
one, which is we'll jump right into.
we'll
that.
jump into it.
We'll jump in tonight. So, David, the process of this is we're going to talk about leveling up.
Yeah.
As you know, I've done some Scout, I've done some Bandit Bards, but I decided to get my friends who I think are on a path that's a little bit ahead of me, get them on this show.
Sure.
And I'm going to talk to you guys as a creator. Todd's going to talk to you as a mega fan because everybody you have here, Todd's read some of their books or loves some of their books. I think Todd's read almost everything when we pre-talked, right?
The only thing that I haven't read is the digital only stuff.
Okay. So we talk about your career, we go over it, and through it, hopefully gain some insight on your path. And basically, I steal all the best ideas until I make it ahead of you.
Perfect.
Right. That's the plan anyway. Thus far,
Like the Highlander. Got it.
yeah, we're about 10 episodes in. Hasn't worked yet, but
I'm going to trip and stumble into Travis's position while he stumbles upwards too. So I'm just going to become a Kickstarter guy.
That's perfect.
I'm terrified.
so let's talk. So, early on before comics, you were in comics before the books, right? You were an interviewer. You were a
I
old
got my
school.
start. I got my start as an intern. I worked at DC. I worked on books like Final Crisis and Batman R.I.P. and a little bit of Green Lantern: Secret Origin, and actually a very early bit of Detective Comics with Batwoman.
Nothing good. Then.
Oh, that's good stuff.
I was in some of those J.H. Williams pages almost a year before it came out.
Nice.
So that was really helpful, just to kind of figure out how to break down the production of comics.
Right.
Because as I'm sure you can relate, comics can be kind of an opaque industry. There's what you can read on the internet, which is helpful. But I think especially when you're working for a corporation, there's a lot of things that like might not be as clear on the outside that
Right.
make a lot more sense when you're on the inside. And also, it is a little bit of the game of telephone. There's a lot of people with a lot of opinions and a lot of advice, and sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wildly in the wrong direction, and half the time you only really learn by doing. So being an intern was very helpful for me. And then yeah, I did reviews and interviews at Newsarama for a long time, over a decade, and I did a lot of reviews, which was very helpful in terms of me kind of figuring out what I liked and what I didn't like, and forcing me to articulate that. Like for example, I wouldn't consider myself a particularly decompressed writer, and I think that speaks to my time as a reviewer. Is that like things like the Babs Tarr run on Batgirl, which was
Mm.
like very standalone, done in one. I really responded to stuff like that.
Right.
Um, but the interviews were also really helpful. I interviewed a lot of creators on their craft. There are people like Rick Remender, Greg Pak, Nick Spencer, Scott Snyder, Andy Schmidt, Marjorie Liu, Kieran Gillen. There are a bunch of names that I'm leaving out, but those were extremely helpful for me. Greg Pak, especially, he kind of was the one that kind of turned on the light bulb for me, where he was like, when I started writing, I sucked. I was terrible at it, and you kind of have to write through the suck, and you're allowed to suck. You can give yourself permission to suck when you start, and that was really useful for me, because I thought you had to kind of like hit the ground running and be immensely talented. And it was Greg that kind of showed me that no, you just have to learn. You have to learn the process. It's just like you're never going to run a marathon the moment you lace up. You have to kind of condition yourself and build yourself. And so my time at Newsarama was sort of, it gave me enough theory to barely make it across the finish line for my first comic. But at least I kind of knew the playing field. I knew the lay of the land. I knew the comics journalism landscape. So I was able to know how to reach out to people who I didn't know, but say, hey, I know of your work. You might know of my work. Would you mind taking a look at my stuff? And I think that kind of got over that initial hurdle of hesitance that a lot of reviewers have from a creator they don't know. But if you personalize it and you say, hey, I'm a big fan of your work, at Graphic Policy, for example, or Adventures in Poor Taste, where I think I'm friendly with people there, they'll at least give the work a look, and then if they like it, then they'll be really excited to try to shine a light and give it a chance.
Yeah, I've heard all that before, and I want to actually preference too for people who watch this. Like, this is Newsarama back in the day where like it was the center of news. Like, you would go at like I remember back in the day, Newsarama used to do live updates of San Diego Comic Con. So it'd be like,
Mhm.
this person just announced.
I did a
you
few
know,
of those. Yep.
Those were something I'd refresh and go
yeah, you're
through and
every
Mhm.
second waiting. I miss
Yep.
those.
Now it's Reddit for me. It's really funny how things have changed, but I remember going to a website to get this info.
But yeah, it was back in the day where all this stuff. But the first book that I'm aware of is Spencer and Locke. Is that the first?
That
Okay.
was my first book. Yeah, when I came up with that, the high concept for that book is what if Calvin and Hobbes grew up in Sin City, and really, for me, I had done a lot of practice writing. I spent 90 days and I wrote a short script every day for 90 days, and they did not have to be good; they just had to be finished. And that really taught me a lot about structure, and it taught me a lot about not being precious, and it taught me a lot about hitting deadlines, because I just said I have to hit 6 pages or 8 pages every single day to do
Right.
this. And so Spencer and Locke was the first time that I was like, maybe I'll actually like get the book made. I wrote that first issue. I really enjoyed it. I then wrote an outline that came faster than any outline has ever come since. Uh, I found an art team in George Santiago Jr. and Jason Smith. I knew Colin Bell, our letter, he used to review for me, so that was kind of an easy get for me. And I was like, well, we'll put together some pages to see how it feels. And the pages turned out really well. I think those were the first
Mhm.
6 pages, I think, of that first issue. Those were the pitch pages. And then I kind of shopped it around on a lark. And Dave Dwanch, who's then an editor at Action Lab, pulled us out of the slush pile and emailed me about 20 minutes after I sent in my pitch and said, "How soon could you get this book done?" And that's kind of when I felt that cold chill run up my spine of, oh,
Right.
this thing is going to happen now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a huge learning process. I was just telling my partner yesterday, I believe, that the book's production was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And because you don't have a track record,
Right.
you don't really know like the process of anything. It's a lot of back and forth with your team, and all you can do is kind of trust your gut. And thankfully, I think as far as first books go, I really couldn't have asked for a better first book. I that book
Yeah.
gave me so much confidence to take my next swing in the industry because of the way people responded to it, and it really. I always try to kind of evoke that feeling of adrenaline that I had when I was putting together Spencer and Locke for any other project I have, but hopefully also kind of keeping my stress levels a little bit less than when that book came out.
Yeah, it's a really solid first book.
Thank you.
Like, it is not. I wouldn't read it and be like, "This is obviously his first swing,"
Thank you.
and it's great. Spencer and Locke was so much fun. I remember reading the OZ, and then you're like, "Hey, I wrote this too. You can check it out." And I remember reading, being like, "This is so much fun and so much darker than the pitch would
Yes.
make you think." And I'm just like, I love this. This is why I
Very
like
True
comics.
Detective, very Fight Club.
Yep.
Yeah, that was it was. I always say I hope for that to be the darkest thing I've ever written. We'll see if that bears out, but yeah,
I hope not,
I,
but I really like dark stuff. So
well, one day, hopefully, we'll do volume 3. I don't know when, I don't know where, but one day I think it'll happen.
yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to point out to the readers or to the watchers here, when you were doing Spencer and Locke at Action Lab, it isn't the Action Lab that we respond to now. Action Lab was almost like on the cusp of being something important, right? They just no, 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 really.
Damn. Finish him.
You know, I won't waste too much time talking about my delinquent publisher there, but I think you know I kind of came up on the cusp.
Right.
It did not take
Mhm.
too long, I think, for the wheels to start falling off over there, and for
Sure.
me and many other people not get paid. But
Mhm.
yeah, when I started, I think they gave me a lot of latitude, which was really helpful, because I think ultimately when you're starting out, you kind of have to learn things on your own. This is very much a garage band kind of mentality,
Right.
especially for the independent comic scene. And the only way you're going to kind of learn at first is you don't need a lot of guardrails. You're just going to kind of figure out like you're going to talk with your people and you're going to figure out like how does this feel compared to the comics that I love. And maybe that's my reviewer brain talking, but I think that's something put
Yeah.
into it is how does this measure up with say what Jed McKay is doing in the main Moon Knight book, you know, or what are some other books that are going on at my level in terms of publishers? Is it on par with that? And if it isn't, then I got to figure out how do I make it that way.
Right.
And that's the great thing about independent books is that, especially if you're doing like a mini series, like you have time to adjust to make these adjustments, and you have time to figure everything out. Whereas, if you're working on say like a monthly superhero title, once you sort of got that first issue written and the art team is on it, the train is on the track.
Tick, tick, tick,
And
tick. Time to go.
you have to turn in another script before your artist finishes that first one. Otherwise, they are sitting on their hands and you are late.
Yeah, you're
So,
bottlenecking it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different kind of speed, but I think that's why I think the independent too big two pipeline makes sense to me.
Right.
Is you need to kind of condition yourself to be able to kind of deliver at a faster pace because that is what they're going to demand.
Absolutely. Well, and so the second book, it was also with Action Lab, was Going to the Chapel.
Yeah, I love that book. That's the book that I think a lot of people don't know about that I wrote. But it's Die Hard at a Wedding, and
Yeah, it's great.
I wrote it. When I finished Spencer and Locke, I get a little restless, and I wanted to jump around from genre to genre, and that's something that I really want to keep doing throughout my career. And I said, what's the genre that nobody's going to expect out of me after Spencer and Locke? Maybe a romantic comedy. What's my version of a romantic comedy look like? And so yeah, I did that with Gavin Guidry, rising star. He's just done some DC stuff, and I think he's doing a story at Extreme Venomverse over at Marvel now. But yeah, that book, it was direct market counter programming. Is really the only way I can describe it. I think a lot of people looked at it and weren't sure what to make of it, but anybody who knew me from Spencer and Locke knew, like, oh, this is going to be kind of fun, like a fun subversion of the tropes. And yeah, we were able to kind of do like an action comedy that kind of embraced and skewered romantic comedy tropes.
Right.
So that was it was a really fun one, and I think it just kind of showed me the value of diversifying. I know there's a school of thought that it's like, know your brand, know your thing, just keep going with it. But I think especially since I started off pretty dark with Spencer and Locke, I think if I had done every book as dark as Spencer and Locke, people would have gotten real sick of me real fast.
Right.
And I think a lot of people said, "Oh, I didn't know you had that book in you." And that's something that I kind of want to keep readers on their toes a little bit. I'd rather they know me for my voice than my genre.
Well,
so far,
this
pretty well
this was
produced.
the first book that I ever read of yours. I'm not sure if you know this, but this
I
was
know
mine.
that.
I'm a huge crime guy, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
picked it up. Spencer and Locke. Looking at the cover, I was like, you're doing it like a Calvin and Hobbes thing. I'm not interested in that, but like
You
crime
fool.
and all about crime. And then I found Spencer and Locke and loved it, but crime was where it's at. Like, because there's not a lot of crime that comes out in the direct market. You know,
Yeah, well, it's it strikes me as it's a tough medium, or it's a tough genre, I should say, to sell unless your name's Ed Brubaker.
right?
Yeah.
You know,
Like Grisham's trying.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and Chris Condon is doing some
Yep.
Right.
great stuff as
Yeah, he's
well.
made some pretty good strides on that too. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it was one of those, like, I kind of wanted my first few books to not lean on the crutch of genre too hard.
Right.
Like I wanted there to be like a little something that made it different, but just like one element that made it different. Because I of course my goal, my dream was to write superheroes
Sure.
at some point. And of course, there's so much spectacle and fantastic powers, especially when my first Marvel book was a team book.
Right.
And but I wanted to make sure that, like, I was conditioning myself as well as I could. And so, I think my creator owned books, especially, that even if there is a fantastical element to it, it's usually involving people with human powers. I guess OZ notwithstanding. But I think that makes it like a little more grounded and sometimes a little more challenging to write. But I think it lowers the bar for entry. I think any reader can read Spencer and Locke or Going to the Chapel and know exactly what they're getting into. And that's kind of that's always been the goal, is I want to invite more people to the table. Everybody's got a favorite comic, they just don't know what it is yet. So
That's a great
hopefully
tagline.
it'll be one of mine.
So next, we're gonna skip. Just because of time, we're gonna skip a lot of the anthologies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Yeah.
do the big strokes. So, and Todd, this
Oh
is
my.
row that I'm gonna try to do it from my head.
Wow, wowie wow.
Go to my head. So I'm gonna go OZ next before Scouts on.
Yeah.
We're gonna do
See.
OZ, which, by the way, I'm sure you know in the Kickstarter community, you are known for the guy who did a Kickstarter and immediately went to Marvel, which is not the way it worked, but like
You do one. That's what you do, right, Travis?
I just keep waiting.
I keep doing one.
The OZ was an interesting story, and a fun story, but it took a long time to get there. When I had finished Spencer and Locke and was sort of working on Spencer and Locke 2, I'd come up with a handful of story ideas. I'd come up with Chapel. I'd come up with Grand Theft Astro, which is still coming.
That's the one, by the way, that we
See?
removed. That's the
I
one
think
we removed.
His site says it's still coming, so I was putting it up there because I'm like, I'm willing it
It's still
into
coming.
existence.
It's still coming. Probably next year. There was OZ, and then there was the story that wound up becoming Savage Avengers.
Nice.
Although I only had it as a creator on. So
Yeah.
OZ, I had developed. I'd actually developed the pitch for a publisher, for a direct market publisher who went all the way up the flagpole. Um, I could probably say it now. It's been long enough. I don't think they're going to mind. I developed it for Boom back in the day, and we got pitched at the exact same time as Coda.
Oh.
I understand. I have no ill will about it. But the thing that was really nice was Eric Harburn, the editor over there, was like, "Listen, man, like I'm really sorry that it didn't get across the finish line. I want you to know it's not reflective of the material. It's really, really encourage you to keep going with it." And he did not need to say that. It was really nice of him to say that, and I believed him. And so, shortly thereafter, I found I connected with artist Ruben Rojas. I found him on Twitter somewhere. I think he was responding to somebody's call for artists, and I saw his pages, and I thought they were fantastic. And so I had offered him Astro, OZ, or the book that wound up becoming Savage Avengers, and he loved OZ. And so it took a long time to kind of get going, and it was one of those things that I was thinking, oh well, we'll get an issue done and we'll shop it around the direct market, and that was right around when COVID hit, and suddenly the direct market Diamond shuts down,
Right.
half the stores shut down. There's stay-at-home orders, and I remember thinking, Charlie Stickney is a mutual friend of all of ours, Russell Nahelty, Pat Shand, Rylan Grant. They're all Kickstarter people. And they had all been encouraging me to do Kickstarter. And it was Charlie who said that Kickstarter and the direct market, there is some overlap, but that is not a one-to-one overlap. They are different audiences. There's a diaspora of readership. And there are people who will buy stuff at the comic shop. There's some people who only buy things at cons. There's some people who only do like Webtoon or digital. Mm-hmm. And there are some people who will only buy on Kickstarter. And so I was really fortunate that I was able to kind of take that fan base that I had built with Spencer and Locke and Chapel and say, hey guys, I'm doing a Kickstarter. It's kind of make or break, but I think it's some of my best work. Do you want in? And I set the goal as kind of like, here's what I think it'll cost to cover like printing and shipping. I was fully prepared to like take a loss on that book, and it blew up. I was so blown away, and the response to it. And then we wound up winning a Ringo Award for that first issue, which is like the honor of my career. And I would go so far as to say that so far it's my favorite creator-owned book I've ever done. I think the whole team is really in sync. Ruben Rojas, Whitney Kogar, Dave Hopkins, just an immensely talented crew. And so I'm very excited to do another Kickstarter for that. I think we're shooting for sometime in the fall. I feel like that book, it's one of my favorites.
Amazing. I was really hoping you're going to be like, this is my favorite Kickstarter book I've ever done. I thought that's where you're going. I'm like, amazing.
Shots fired, Nightmare Theater.
Take that.
I think it was a really useful book for me, though, because, just like the garage band mentality of doing a book at a place like Action Lab, where my issues with them and their lack of fulfillment of my contract notwithstanding, when I got that first book out, it was tough enough to make the book.
Right.
Letting somebody else handle the printing and distribution was really helpful. I mean, I could pull my own weight in terms of publicity, but I was not ready to learn how to print my own book. I was not ready to learn how to ship my own books to hundreds of other people. By the time I did this Kickstarter, it really empowered me. I know now, okay, I know that here's a bunch of printers that I can call, and I understand what the specs are and kind of what kind of paperweight that I prefer. And I know like I have a
What is your preferred GSM?
Ask me again later.
Okay.
Let me think of that one.
As a sticker maker, I'm very interested in your preferred paperweight. That's the hard-hitting journalism that I bring.
No, I'm trying to think. It was I think it was like 40 pounds.
Yeah, nice.
Stock.
Yeah, solid. Because it can't be too thick for a comic book.
Yeah. I think we went for 40 pounds.
Nice, solid, good choice.
At least I have it in my inbox.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it was really useful that I had a community of people that I could ask these questions for.
Mm-hmm.
Asking Charlie Stickney, asking Pat Shand, asking Russell Nahelty, asking Ryland Grant. Ryland was like a huge help for all this. And that was really helpful in terms of doing this project. And I think now it's really helped me out because I don't feel like, oh, well, I can't. If I can't get this thing into the direct market, it's never going to happen. Now it's kind of like defiance,
Mm-hmm.
The OZ, like, if I had known, like, for going to the chapel by any chance, like if I had known then what I knew now, I would have kickstarted that book.
Right.
Sure.
Because I think, that's a book that the direct market like didn't quite know what to do with, but Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can say "suck it, Coda," and then
Coda is a tremendous book, and
it is. It's great. So is the OZ. I think they both had shelf space, and it would have been great. But
I'm
not Boom.
The door is always open to Boom.
There you go.
But yeah, it really empowered me because now I don't have to ask anybody's permission. Right. To make books. I can just make books, and I can make those books. I can make them financially viable in a way that can be challenging in the direct market for certain publishers. That'll only give you like a small stipend that won't cover the actual production of the book, and or places that only operate in back end that might not actually pay out what it costs for you to make the book. So I think Kickstarter is a wonderful place. It's a wonderful environment, and I plan on sticking around Kickstarter for as long as it's a viable platform.
Nice. It's great. Even I really Travis. I really want Kickstarter to keep flourishing because getting to see people who do, like, you both have done Kickstarter, and then Travis is showing how you can Kickstart something and then it can go direct market and do well over there because they are completely different customer bases. And there's just something about the connection of like getting something from Kickstarter and dealing with the creative team. Yeah. It's really like wholesome feeling. Yes, and it'd be really sad for that to disappear because it's such an interesting space.
I'd be surprised if it did, only because Kickstarter has so many different kind of niches. And I think comics, I think there is a good chunk of fans that like the garage band mentality. And so they're always looking for like the hot new thing, the
what can we make happen?
Yeah. What can we make happen? Or they're pretty obscure. You've probably never heard of them. People
it's like very that. Hipster.
Yeah, but they like artisanal. That's
yes. I call myself an artisanal sticker maker, so I'm really into. I really like artisanal as a word for comics too, because it is. It's like small batch. It's small batch comics.
But I think that really kind of taught me to like stick to my guns, because it would have been very easy to say, the OZ got rejected, and I sent it to a bunch of places and nobody picked it up. But I had an editor believed in it, and then I believed in it, and then I saw the pages and I really believed in it.
And then
Ringo believed in it.
Yes. The Ringo family, God bless them. I think it was a valuable lesson, and it's certainly one of the proudest books I've ever worked on.
That's awesome. It's excellent, and if anybody hasn't read it, dear Lord, go check it out. It's great.
Order it on my website, davidpepose.com.
There it is.
It is there.
It's in the description down below. You can go click on it.
So next we have Scout's Honor. This is
Yeah.
Aftershock book, which is kind of cool. I enjoyed it immensely. It's probably one of my favorite worlds that you've created that I wanted to spend a little bit more time in.
Sure. Yeah, Scout's Honor. That was such a fun book, and that's the book that got me on Marvel's radar. So I'm
Makes
always
sense.
grateful for that. Um, yeah, I Scout's Honor was that was the product of kind of the ultimate of long games in many ways. I had been hitting up Aftershock for probably about a year and a half at that point. I'd sent them multiple pitches. I'd sent them the OZ. I'd sent them a few other things that like didn't quite pan out. And I remember Lee Kramer, who's the president of the company, lives in Los Angeles, and so I said, "Hey, man, can I buy you lunch and kind of just I just want to tell you about who I am and kind of hear more about the publisher." At the time, I had been sending full outlines, and Lee was like, "Oh no, we don't want that." I was like, "What?" He goes, "No, we don't want that. We want you to send us log lines of stuff that we might be interested in, and then you develop it into an outline." I was like, "Okay." So I went home and I dashed off 10 outlines of just like stuff that I liked, and like I had 9, and I was like, I think 10 would be a good round number, and so I was like. I had this idea that I was like, what's the weirdest thing that could be used for a Bible? Like the tome of a civilization, and it was down between a Boy Scout manual and a D&D manual. But I didn't know D&D at the time, and my brothers were Boy Scouts, and I remember how alienating it felt for me, who never was a Boy Scout, seeing like the occasional Boy Scout troop at my house. It felt culty. And so I thought, oh,
It's because it is.
that's a book, So I wrote that. It's like the last log line had having done no research, and of course that's the log line that
That's the one.
Aftershock's like, yeah, develop that.
That's
So
great.
over like 3 or 4 feverish weeks, I remember I kind of banged out this outline. I finished it up on the plane ride home from Boston Comic Con that year. And so, yeah, they lo and behold, they went for it, and I think that speaks to, like I got to know Lee, and I knew the editor in chief, Mike Martz. I interned for him when he was at DC, so like he had known me for a long time, and he was the one that kind of encouraged me to kind of make my way in the indie scene. He said nobody walks under the Yankees. I remember that very clearly towards the end of my internship. He's like, you kind of have to work your way on the farm teams and the minor leagues and then the scout teams, and then you then you kind of get into a name team, and then you build your way to the Yankees. And so it really felt like kind of coming full circle, getting to work with Mike. And then Christina Harrington, who I can't say enough great things about. She really championed the book in a big way. I think she really liked that there were political elements to the book, but they were not so hardcore that like it would drown out the narrative and the world building behind it. But that was a book about theocracy and sort of the whitewashing of history, and also sort of presentation of gender. Yeah, I was really happy with how fans responded to that book. It was also a huge learning curve for me, because that was the first time that I had ever worked with an editor. Oh, the Scouts Honor pins! I love it. I love it. Yeah, Scouts Honor was the first time that I was not calling my own shots for everything, and that was was challenging for me. Like I loved working with Luca Castellanguida, but like they picked him. That wasn't my pick. And so it was interesting, like, working through a conduit,
Right.
and sort of like, okay, I'm gonna send thoughts to my editors, and then they'll kind of decide if they like it or not, and then they'll send it if they like it to Luca. But I'm really happy with how that book came together, and I think in a lot of ways, it's the book that kind of almost speaks the most to me and my upbringing. I mean, I didn't grow up in a cult, but I grew up in
Yeah, thank you. I was just like, let him finish his thought, but totally.
I grew up in like a fairly religious Jewish household,
Mhm.
in the conservative Midwest, and it was sort of one of those
Hi.
when I left the Midwest,
Hello from
uh,
Michigan.
yeah, Missouri, right here.
Hey.
When I went to college in Massachusetts, it was suddenly like I remember my mind kind of expanding my freshman year of college, where it was sort of like all these things that I thought were like Republican traits were actually like Democrat traits, and I was like, oh, yeah, I don't want to tell anybody what they can and can't do with like who they marry or their womb, or
Yeah.
like I like there being a social safety net. Like, I can't. I'm not going to tell anybody who they can and can't marry. Like, who,
That sounds like a specific side.
yeah, like who the fuck? But that really spoke to kind of that character arc in Scout's
Yeah.
Honor, where it's like this thing that you've been instilled in all this time, and then suddenly the rug's pulled out from under you. I
Right.
do think that's something that a lot of people can relate to in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
And the question is like, do you kind of like stick your head in the sand and ignore it, or do you kind of dig into your heels and say, I'm going to follow this through to the bitter end?
Or do
Right?
you listen to the hologram that's telling you this information and change the trajectory of your civilization?
Yeah.
That relatable idea.
A relatable idea. But that was an interesting book because I signed the contract for that book. It was the weekend that they shut down Emerald City for COVID. And
Wild.
so I had written the first issue, an outline before they greenlit it, which I've realized it's not usually the case in most publishers. But writing the rest of that book during COVID, I was bouncing between Scout's Honor and the last issues of the OZ, kind of back to back. And that was a very interesting process.
That's an interesting two worlds to live in
Yeah,
for a while.
during
While
that
COVID's happening. Yeah.
The onset of COVID, like pre-vaccines.
Uh-huh.
So it was really, I think it's my way of working through it.
Nice.
And it's even like crazier for you. The path for creator until 2022 was we do something at an Action Labs or a Scout or a Source Point, and then Aftershock is that level up because you get a little pay, right? That's where it goes. It's not where it's at now, but you were at your level up, and as you're at your level up, Diamond saying, Marvel's is breaking from Marvel. You're like, what is happening? The world is going.
It was an interesting.
Will they be comics?
Yeah. It was a lot.
It's all digital now.
But yeah, it was one of those. It's like I feel lucky that like I dodged the worst of it during all this. Like, I got paid by Aftershock. I don't have beef with them. The book came out. I don't have beef with them. I feel like if my books were coming out right when that book, like when Diamond shut down, that would have been a problem. But thankfully, I think Scout's Honor Scout's Honor came out the day of the insurrection. So
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
I remember making a joke about that.
I thank goodness I had done all of the promo prior to
yes.
the insurrection coming out.
Yes.
I just remember our puppy Ruby. We'd only had her for a couple of months, and I just remember her looking at me like with this look of horror, and I took a photo, and I was like, "Baby's first book release / insurrection." So yeah, that was interesting. But I can't say it sounds bad to say it this way, but it's like the insurrection did not like hurt the book. Like it didn't didn't slow it down.
No.
So I feel like our timing could have been.
It made it more interesting. Because it was you and we just talked to Hedrick. Recount happened.
Same time, yeah.
Recount happened with it too, and it's just like honestly, it's the best thing that could happen, and not for like a bad reason. It's just like it's timely, and it's serendipitously timely, and I really enjoyed it because of all of that.
like I said, it was my way of working through some like particularly chaotic times.
Where's Ruby? It's a great
Ruby's
question,
in the other
Daniel.
room. She tries to make a podcast all about her, so she's
Yeah.
So the next thing you did, and this is just what's written on the Marvel website,
yeah.
you stole Savage Avengers from Jerry's dead hands. Right?
That's actually what it says. It's crazy that it says that.
That's how it works.
Jerry doesn't even work in comics anymore, is what I hear. Like, 'cause you
You stole his career?
It's on you. I'm Jerry Dugan.
Oh.
At Kaiser Soze.
That's when we come back to it. And it's
No, so the way that wound up happening was I had been in touch with Marvel for some time. Since Spencer and Locke came out, I emailed editors like Tom Brevoort, C.B. Cebulski, Darren Shan, Will Moss, and I emailed them pretty much anytime I had a new release coming out. And Tom was the guy who like really took the time to respond. And I remember Tom saying to me, he's like, "Look, I'm gonna be straight with you. I know that you haven't been a reviewer in some time, but you were a reviewer who took hard enough swings that I know your name, and so I just want you to know that like for you, good enough is not going to be good enough."
Right.
That's
you talk the talk. Now you got to now you got to prove you can walk the walk.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a minute and I thought about it, and I was like, "You're absolutely right, 100%." I really appreciate you saying that because yeah, like I want to deliver the best I can to anything I do, whether that's writing reviews or making books. And I hope that if you see any opportunity for me to improve, that you'll let me know. And so he made me put my money where my mouth was. I think it was like 6 months later, he sent me an email. It was end of June 2021. So it was right before I was leaving for the July 4th holidays. And he's like, "Hey, we have a possible project for you, but you need to fill out this like paperwork that says if we're coming up with a similar idea, you can't sue us."
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking, oh great, it's going to be like, maybe it's an anthology story, or if I'm lucky, I know.
Who would give someone a team book right off the bat?
Yeah,
That'd be crazy.
I thought, or I was like, maybe in my wildest dreams it could be a miniseries, and then I sent it back, and they're like, "So we're looking to relaunch Savage Avengers, and we wondered if you might have any ideas." And I swear I felt my soul like leave my body.
Yeah.
I remember Ruby sensed a change in the air. She pounced on me. She was very excited. But my puppy Ruby. And so
I felt an arrhythmia happen in your chest. Are you okay?
Yeah. So I at first I was like, why me? And then I realized like all of my books are mashup books, and Savage Avengers was the mashup book at Marvel.
Sure.
And so I was like, they said, you can use Conan the Barbarian if you want. You don't have to, but kind of let us know, what you think. I was thinking at the time, well, I should write Conan because how often am I going to get the opportunity?
Right.
But also, that felt like kind of a draw for that book. Except I was like, I don't have any ideas for Conan. Except I had one idea for Conan. It was something years prior. I had written an outline for something that I wanted to pitch Dark Horse. I wanted to pitch them Conan versus the Terminator, because I thought, why does the Terminator have Arnold Schwarzenegger's face? Why does he have Conan's face? And I thought maybe they wore the skin of the scariest human they had ever faced.
Nice.
So I had written this outline, and I was really excited about it, and I was getting ready to pitch it to Dark Horse. And that week, Marvel announces they get the rights to Conan.
Amazing.
So all right, I guess I'm going to have to file the serial numbers off on that one, like turn it into later on. But I got other things I got to do. I'm never going to see that one again. So Tom Brevoort emailed me about Savage Avengers, and I was like, what if we did Conan versus the Terminator? We did, we used Deathlock.
Yeah.
It's a character I've always really loved.
Good.
I've had a lot of ideas for Deathlock over the years. And I did not realize that, and I was saying this to Tom, that Tom was one of the original editors of Deathlock. He's got he likes Deathlock. And so I think that idea really kind of clicked with him. That was that was such a fun experience. Again, just like Spencer and Locke was like the best first book I could have had in general. Like, Savage Avengers, I couldn't have asked for a better first book at Marvel. Some of it was kind of learning how to think on my feet and roll with the punches a bit. Like figuring out negotiating what team members was I going to use, and figuring out which, kind of negotiating with the offices. Like I couldn't get Carnage. I'd asked for Carnage, but they're like, what about Flash Thompson? I couldn't get Dakin. He was in Marauders, but they were like, Tom said, what about Weapon H? And I was like, oh, you know what? If I did dial H for Hulk, that could be really cool.
Yeah.
It was one of those, like, I think the book kind of got a little overshadowed by kind of the news with the Conan license. In that,
what? No one was talking about that at all for like a month.
Nobody's talking about that the Saturday before my first issue dropped.
Right.
Yeah.
You were like, they motherfuckers couldn't wait 3 days. That's what
right.
That was a bummer that it came out the way that it came out, because like we were planning on doing like an announcement, but like I knew, I had written, I turned in our second issue when I kind of got the word from on high that they weren't going to be renewing the Conan license, so like you got to get rid of them by, I think I was told, issue 8. So I said, okay, based on the way we're splitting these arcs, that means I got to get them out at 5. I can get them out at 5. I had written the arc saying if we want to leave him, we can leave him. It wasn't. I didn't really have to switch gears too much in that first arc. Arc 2 changed for the better because I said I need a new lead, and I said, what about Punisher 2099? We'll go to the year 2099, and I was really happy with how that all came together.
Yeah. It was a really good transition.
Thank you.
I was really into it because I was like, I wonder if like how this is gonna go, because outside of the fan side, you're like, was Conan supposed to be there for 30 issues? You don't know like what the plan is, and then you assume it's on the fly, and then you read it and it's like, oh, that seems legit. All right.
we knew we were going to go from past to future. That was kind of set in stone.
Yeah.
The things that changed was it was going to be kind of a nondescript future.
Sure.
We were going to have Conan. It was going to be like what would happen if a Deathlock version of the Cult of Set had taken over the planet.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to use Conan. We weren't really sure about the Cult of Set, so we just didn't want to tempt fate. I think making it 2099, like it was something that people liked. It was really fan servicey.
It was fun.
I had pitched the series and had been told at the jump, like we can definitely get you 10 issues on that. And I think, I don't think it's any secret. Like the market's in a volatile place right now.
Sure.
So I don't begrudge, they gave me the 10 issues that they promised me. Could I have maybe written another arc? Yeah, I probably could have. But thankfully, I do have that idea still in my back pocket, and it'll be really fun when the day I inevitably tell it. It was a great experience, kind of learning how to work with Marvel. Because just like with Aftershock, it's sort of your level of control is even more decreased. You're kind of you're really trying to measure twice and cut once, because people don't have time to kind of be making like willy-nilly corrections here and there.
Yeah.
But it was also, I think the thing I love about working at a place like Marvel, particularly with an editor like Tom Brevoort, is the collaborative nature of it. I probably email my editors at least once a week over like, hey, what do you think about this? Or, hey, here's a script. Or, hey, we're kind of bouncing back and forth on stuff. And Tom is the best editor I've ever worked with by a wide margin. And he just, the notes that he gives, it always makes the end product more successful. And so I'm very grateful to work with him. And I feel like I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And we're on a time crunch, but next time I definitely want to bring up Tom. That was one of my plans to talk about that, because, if you're studying Marvel, like really, I would argue that Tom Brevoort is the most known editor name.
Yes.
Like of actual net editors. So working with the highest one in the land, right?
The highest in the land.
Highest in the land, going back to the OZ.
Yes.
He's like the mayor of the Munchkin City.
I think.
Can we put that somehow in a pull quote?
Oh no, no, please
For
don't.
him,
Um,
that'll
I,
go good.
I just he's seen enough stories to kind of have a sense of like he's got a great sense of story structure, and he also knows the lay of the land of the Marvel universe in a great way. For Fantastic Four, that was his idea. We were kind of figuring out. We knew Die Hard in the Baxter Building, but we didn't have a villain. And he was the one who said, "What about Weebly at Midas?" And as soon as he said that name, I felt the whole story crystallize. I was like, oh, she's perfect. She's the evil opposite of Sue Richards, where like one person is like empowered by her love of family, and the other one is completely estranged and alienated from it. And so, yeah, he has not steered me wrong once yet, and so I will always I'll always go to bat for him for anything he asks. And he's given me every opportunity. Almost every opportunity I've had at Marvel has been through Tom, and I'm very appreciative of them. And it's just really led to some really fun work experiences.
That's
Um,
cool.
so I want to jump to Moon Knight, but I want to stick a second in Fantastic Four because for
Yeah.
me, that's the biggest level up that you have right now.
Okay.
Because it is Savage Avengers, these miniseries, they're great, but they come and go. Like they go into back issue bins, but someone's always going to be looking to complete their Fantastic Four run and have to hunt down your thing. And you know what I'm saying? Like no one's going to, hunting down yours is so mandatory reading. Unlike a Savage Avengers, you can skip it. You got to read the main Avengers. You don't need to read Savage Avengers, but you cannot miss an issue of Fantastic Four if you're a Fantastic Four fan.
It was thank you. It was a challenge just being able to kind of fit it all in 2 issues,
Right.
and kind of juggle in like an event on top of that. We kind of got a quick write up of what the event entailed, but like we were saying kind of before we started recording, we only know so much about what other people are doing, at least at my level. And I think that's for everybody's safety. It's so like it gives us less opportunity to step on other people's toes. If we don't really know what every single other person is doing, we can just say, "Hey, is this character available?" And they can say yes or no. They're in such and such. But yeah, I think Fantastic Four. I love doing ensemble pieces. I love doing team books, and that one I think really kind of hit all the buttons of what I've been building to date.
Yeah. All right. So go ahead and pitch us this Moon Knight miniseries. Get that
Yeah.
out of the way.
Yeah, we've got question. We need to get questions and Moon Knight in 5 minutes.
All
So
right. Do it.
Moon Knight City of the Dead. I've been billing it as Inception meets
look at this
Taken.
Scotty Young.
It's about a young runaway is left for dead outside of the Midnight Mission, and Mark Spector, he brings this kid to Hunter's Moon, and they basically they resuscitate him, but the kid died in the table for 5 minutes. He's on a ventilator, and Hunter's Moon's like, "I'm really sorry, this is tragic. Like, we can't bring him back." And Mark says, "He's not dead yet. And my vow is to protect the travelers of the night. And as long as he's still breathing, that means he's under my protection." And so Mark winds up detaching his soul and journeying to the city of the dead to try to find and rescue this kid. And in so doing, winds up teaming up with Layla El-Fawli from the Disney Plus Moon Knight show, who's making her debut as the all-new Scarlet Scarab.
Cool.
So it's pretty fun. It's got elements of Inception and The Matrix. It's got Taken and Man on Fire. I saw somebody actually refer to the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, and that's actually not super far off. I was going to say Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but that also worked. It's been a fun way to kind of hit Moon Knight, showing kind of we're doing a supernatural story told through a film noir lens.
Right.
So we've got like we've got kind of the running narration, which kind of helps separate it a little from the main Moon Knight series. But also it's a story about Moon Knight kind of coming to terms with his legacy of violence and how he's always been trying to do better. But what happens when like all the people he sent to an early grave wind up coming back for a taste of payback?
He's failed a lot of times.
He's failed a lot of times. And I think that really, it brings me full circle in a lot of ways.
That's cool.
If you like Spencer and Locke, I think you're really going to enjoy this book. I think it's
Nice.
really the spiritual successor, the superhero version of all of this. Mental health is neither
Right.
Spencer or Detective Locke's
Amazing. Whoa.
strong suits. And so, it's a particularly fun book that I think speaks to Moon Knight's history in a way that fans of the show, longtime readers of the book, people who are brand new to Moon Knight, I think there's going to be a lot of people to love on that.
Amazing. I just want the pull quote now to be like the spiritual successor of Spencer and Locke on the back of a Moon Knight book. Because, whoa, I didn't really think about the mental health side and how that can tie into it. Because that's fantastic. It's my favorite part of Moon Knight.
The only cooler story you could have announced is Round Robin 2.
Listen, people who like that Round Robin crossover, I know exactly what you're talking about. There will be something in there that you.
All right.
Amazing. We got two pull quotes. We got two things for the back of the book. It's perfect.
We're going to get to questions because he's got 2 minutes. All right.
Yep.
You ready? David.
Rapid fire questions.
What do you think makes you stand out in the comic market?
Wild high concepts. Wild high concepts that I can sell very quickly. Inception meets Taken. Calvin and Hobbes meets Sin City.
Highlighting mental health disorders.
Yeah.
Die Hard, the Baxter Building.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. That's a good
one. Mad Max meets the Wizard of Oz.
Yep. Boy Scouts take over the world.
Your next card, quick.
Oh yeah. What makes you keep going when everything becomes difficult? Yes, thank you. That's
From Larry David. I like it.
Yes.
Fight the satisfaction of seeing it get done.
All right.
Yes, love it.
What does, now that you're at my top tier of where I want to be, what does leveling up look like for you, mother effer? Like, what does it look like?
Just what's the next project?
Okay.
That's it.
What do you want your next level up to be?
Another team book.
Which team book? I'm just kidding. I won't make you.
Whatever
you're actually in the mix. I won't make you have to say that stuff.
Whatever they'll give me.
Nice.
All right.
You want new words. All right, let's get you out of here, David.
Thank you so much, David. If anybody hasn't read any of these things, go to the description. Go to his site. His Twitter's on there. Everybody go enjoy David Pepose because he genre hops. There will be something for you.
And we'll have you back on to talk about all the things we missed.
Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your night.
Bye.